At the beginning of this season, I promised that we would ask the hard questions and we would be in your face. If you, as a member of society, is ignorant towards the LGBT community, if you are biased against them, if you have issues respecting them, and if you have an objection to their existence within our society, then tonight is not the show for you. Tonight we are talking about the existence, whether we like it or not, of the LGBT community in Trinidad and Tobago. And in front of me, I have a judgment from Justice Devendra Rampersad decriminalizing sexual relations between consulting adults. And as of yesterday, a judgment handed down by Justice Marissa Robertson in the Eastern Caribbean courts decriminalizing sexual relations between two consulting adults in Antigua and Barbuda. Before this, in 2016, the Belize Supreme Court also did the same, decriminalizing sexual relations between two consulting adults, and they considered adults as 16 and over. Over the years, we have heard terrible words. Some of us have grown up in a society and grown up in a generation where, and I'm going to use some very derogatory words that may make you feel uncomfortable, where your sons may have been bullied in school and called a faggot, a bullerman, a fussy man, a chichi man. There's music that sings, that has lyrics to that effect. And there are many of us that are guilty to dancing and having a good time to the words chichi and fussy man. But then on the other scale, I ask the question, there are also those in society who have fetishes and love and fetishes that swing within the spectrum of bisexuality. And there are people who get off of it and then walk out onto the streets and pretend it does not exist. We have governments, successive governments, that have passed laws in Trinidad and Tobago, but did not have any consideration for persons of same-sex relations. The Equal Opportunities Act 2000 is flawed. The Cohabitational Act is flawed. The Sexual Offences Act by Justice Rampersad is fixed to some extent. There are many other issues that arise, and we are going to discuss all of those issues. With me this evening, I have Christopher Plummer, an activist in Trinidad and Tobago, championing the cause of the young LGBT community. I have with me via Zoom Marcus Kissoon, who is joining us from London, England. He's a gender specialist. And I have Ms. Valini Pundit, who is a clinical psychologist. Before we get into our discussion, I want to highlight two things that our society may be very oblivious to. You may ask yourselves, what is the significance of June, the month of June? Well, my research shows that the month of June has been considered a month of recognition of the LGBT community because of the Stonewall riots of 1969, which happened in New York City. At that point in time, it was in the early mornings of June 28, 1969, a New York City police raided a gay bar on Christopher Street called the Stonewall Inn. However, the patrons of the club and the bar, they did not just sit idly by and accept their fate, but they fought back. And they fought back for recognition and for rights. And from then to now, that particular event has, what I would say, snowballed into a major reaction over the years and has forced jurisdictions across the world to recognize that within their society, there's an LGBTQ plus community. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, I wrote a paper, which is yet to be published, where I call the LGBT community a subsection of society, in fact, a subset of society, because while they exist, they just simply exist. So tonight, I also want to talk about the importance of secularism. There's this discussion that has happened over and over again and time again, where the church has gotten involved. regardless of the type of church, the church has gotten involved in the discussion and has been consulted. But Trinidad and Tobago, like many other states, is a secular state. So you may ask yourself, what is secularism? And I will read for you from the definition. Secularism is the principle of the separation of government institutions and persons mandated to represent the state from the religious institution and religious dignitaries. The right to be free from religious teachings, rules, lessons is one of the manifestations of secularism. That is to say, our state is one of those where governance is not linked, good governance is not linked to the opinions of the religious beliefs and religiosity on a whole. So that's my opening statement for this evening. I now join with Christopher, I join with Valini, and I have my first question to all of you all. There is this belief by society that being gay or belonging to the spectrum of the LGBTQ plus society is a choice. I'll start with Christopher. Christopher, what is your opinion on this?
Well, to begin with, it's not a choice, and it was never a choice. Our lives, growing up as young kids, we would know, we would feel it, we would understand what it is to have that connection with the same sex. You know, going to school, you would feel like, oh, like secondary school, you would be like, oh my God, why am I feeling this way? Why should I feel this way? Nights crying on pillows, asking yourself, why? Because your mom wants you to marry and have kids and whatsoever, but you're not interested in that. That is not what your feelings within yourself, that emotional feeling, right? I ask myself all the time, why, you know? But I had to love myself. I had to love who I am. And I did that. And my family accepted me. My friends, my work have accepted me. And I'm proud to be who I am.
Did you have difficulties in terms of accepting this, to coming to this point of acceptance?
I accepted myself when I was 18 years of age.
And the years prior to that?
Yes. I accepted everything, who I am. I had my struggles, mind you. Life is not a bed of roses, but it's sweet, but it's for everybody to enjoy. And we here in Trinidad and Tobago are not doing what is right for young people that are coming up here in society. It's just negativity. Now, your parents, they are not dumb, deaf, and blind, right? They can see. Why ignore your kids? Have the conversation. Just don't go and say, hey, carry me to the pastor. The pastor going to take out that demon or whatsoever from you. No, they are not going to take out any demon from you. It's who you are. It's like the pastor, he himself could be gay and live in a double life. And it happens here in churches.
Valini, I go to Valini. Valini, as a clinical psychologist, have you been met with situations where people come to you and they carry this burden and don't know how to deal with it?
Absolutely, yeah. It can be a very painful experience, and the whole process. And, you know, the whole question of LGBT rights, I mean, it's an evolving one worldwide, right? But we still have a very long way to go in Trinidad, because there is the in terms of susceptibility to mental illness, in terms of stress, it's a powerful one. So to answer your question, I mean, I've read away a bit, but the question was whether
you're born this way or choose
a choice.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is no, but there is mixed research But the more predominant research is that there are more genetic underpinnings from twin studies and brain studies and so on that determine sexuality. There are also social, of course, sexuality is mediated by social inputs as well, but it is a genetics, not a choice.
Very well. Marcus?
Yeah, so from a gender perspective, I think it's important that we understand that sexuality is also very socially constructed, meaning that society tells us what is appropriate and what isn't. And I think that is key in understanding how people want to identify in public spaces, not necessarily dictating their desires. So I think it's quite important for us to understand that sexuality has multiple ways in how it becomes part of our lives. Past experiences, desire, feelings, pleasure, even sometimes trauma, contributes to the way in which we learn to love and who we are attracted to. So to say that sexuality is a choice isn't as simple as a switch. You just can't turn on what and who you desire, who you want to be with, who you are attracted to, and there aren't any fixed scholarship around where sexuality comes from. There are all schools of thought: genetics, social construct. In the earlier days of psychology, they were saying that overprotective mothers were the reason for particular kinds of sexualities, right? So I think to ask whether it's a choice or not is problematic on its own, because it doesn't lend to the kind of inequalities that exist. The argument shouldn't be whether somebody chooses to love or whether somebody is born to love. I think it's really about how society accepts differences and nuances in loving, right?
I actually love that answer. Now, the thing about it is, all three of you have spoken about young people and the impact that young people the impacts that they and the situations that they deal with. Within recent times, there has been absolute objection to sex education in our primary and secondary schools, and that objection has come from more so from religious bodies. I want to hear from all of you all. I'll start again with Christopher. Should we bite the bullet, and should our those in authority? I think we have a very capable Minister of Education, one who's very astute, and I think she could make a decision on this. But should we take the opportunity to begin the discussion at least at the secondary school level?
Yes, we need to do that. At this point in time, we need to do that because a lot of kids that are in the secondary school system, they have this feeling, right? It could be boy or girl, they have this feeling, this urge that are inside them. They want to tell their parents, but they can't because the society that we live in, it's messed up. And the education system is messed up as well too. It's very bad. And let me tell you, FPA Planning Association, I did what they call peer counseling at a time. And what they taught us about sexual reproduction and everything, they never taught you about homosexuality or when they talk about anal sex now, it's like, that's taboo. But I'm an understanding person. At that point, I had knowledge of what they were talking about. And I know for a fact, they are telling you, no, that passage and that, you can't, you're going to get this STDs and that STD. No, all different kind of craziness they were putting in your head as a kid. But when you do your research now, you get something totally different.
Marcus, what do you think about the whole objection of sex ed in our schools?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but that has been part of my life's work for the last couple of years, especially through the Break the Silence and child sexual abuse. And firstly, I want us to ask ourselves, what are the problems or issues we are addressing through health and family life education? We're not just teaching it for teaching its sake. We're understanding that there is a collective set of issues affecting children, and one that is dear to my heart is child sexual abuse, right? And in my own work, I have come to realize that homophobia has become one of the barriers as to why young boys do not disclose or report their sexual abuse, right? Secondly, young people don't have language around sexuality, and sexuality not just being who you not how you have sex, but just how you come to understand yourself as sexual beings. What health and family life education would do is start to give a kind of narrative and language and comfort for young people to say, one, this is not right, or I am now learning how to negotiate sex and sexual relations. I am now knowing what is appropriate sexual interactions. So the thing is, health and family life education, with the absence of teaching about sexuality and homophobia and all of these things, what it does, it limits the response to child sexual abuse, at least from where I come from. My priority is treating with child sexual abuse, and the evidence is there. Homophobia, the lack of conversation, continues to be the barriers as to why children, whether you're from the LGBTQ plus community or just or children generally, aren't aware of their sexual rights. They aren't given language and narratives to tell their story. And we cannot be the ones to continue to make those conversations shameful and limited to their experiences, because it's doing more harm. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the problem we're addressing with HFLE? We know one of them is child sexual abuse. We know the absence of homophobia in conversation, and talking about sexuality limits their own preventative, their own healing, their own reporting, and just denies them freedom from sexual abuse.
Valini, in the Chief Secretary's budget for 2022-2023, under education, he has highlighted that he's going to bring in clinical psychologists and social workers and all of that to create an environment where there is a holistic approach to teaching in Tobago, right? Talk to me about, do you think that's an effective approach, and how can we bring that extend that into Trinidad in a way that those in authority is actually listening to us and hearing? I mean, I have always said that Tobago is going to be the one to lead us one of these days into the future, but aspects of the Chief Secretary's budget did talk about things that we in Trinidad and Tobago are shying away from. Give me your thoughts on that from that perspective.
Yeah, I think that there definitely is a need to broaden the education curriculum to include matters of mental health, of health and family life education. That, you know, as Marcus said very beautifully, because that it then gives kids the language, and it gives them the space and the opportunities to talk about things that, you know, specialists would be able to understand. And I think the benefits of having health and family life or sex education in schools would also extend into the further society, because it goes a long way towards reducing stigma and discrimination. And it generally, sexuality is a big part of life. And it just makes kids more prepared to deal with life and themselves and situations that they would come up with in life. And I think it's important too, when we look at some of the developed countries, for example, in Denmark and the Netherlands, where sex education is a part of the curriculum. They have some of the lowest rates of underage pregnancies. They have some of the lowest rates of sexually transmitted diseases. So when you look at the correlation abroad of having this into our curriculum, it's worthy of giving some thought to have a fully holistic approach like this.
Thank you. All right, we take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the effects and the impact of the patriarchy in how we move forward. So we'll be right back. This is Dr. Shane Mohammed, geopolitical scientist and lecturer. I invite you to join me for a new exciting show on IETV, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. The Real Politique is not an ordinary talk show, but one of education, enlightenment, and examination. Here we discuss not just the surface issues, but the factors, shortcomings, and lack of will to change the socio-economic and political realities facing our nation. We ask the hard questions, seek out the difficult answers, whilst at the same time creating a space for dialogue and discussion which all of society can learn, understand, and hopefully respond actively and for the greater good of the Republic. This is the Real Politique. Welcome back. Welcome back. And I hope you're uncomfortable at this point in time, or you have probably switched your station off. But we have been a conservative society. And if you look at Trinidad and Tobago, from south to central to north to west to east to Tobago, there's subcultures. Every part of Trinidad and Tobago that I just geographically identified possess a different culture. Some cultures, some of those subcultures are similar. The most modern culture within those subcultures is those in the Western Hemisphere. It seems as though those who live within the north and northwest of Trinidad tend to have accepted the fact that the LGBTQ community exists. The more we go south, the less it is accepted. But are we a society that is still stuck in patrimony? And does that patrimony, and has that patrimony been the reason why we have not had any movement towards bringing to the forefront critical issues such as these? And as been highlighted by my guests thus far, this is not a small drop in the bucket. This is a thunderstorm. This is a hurricane type issue that needs more than just discussion, it needs action. Additionally, one of the actions it needs is a change in our behavior and in our societal culture, and it also needs politicians with the testicular fortitude to push for constitutional reform, which will be more embracing, because right now our constitution is a 1976 constitution, 40 years old and 40 years backward. To my guest, I'll start with Velini. To what extent will you say that the patriarchy and patrimony has affected our growth and development as a society?
That's a challenging question, Jane. I think it definitely has, because if you have government and if you have leadership generally that is patriarchal, then you are going to have policies in place which it's more likely to benefit one group and just look at society and govern society through one particular lens. And that's why it's so important to be inclusive and to strive to meet these targets for inclusion of women in government and so on, which we are seeing more of now. But we need effective leadership that is balanced, that can be truly reflective of the population of Trinidad and Tobago. So I think it has influenced greatly over the past, and I think there is a change happening. But I wish it could be a little faster, perhaps.
I want to agree with you on that. Marcus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I agree with what Velini is saying. I think what she's alluding to is that one, patriarchy is the governing system that values men and boys above all the rest. And more so, heteropatriarchy is what has governed some of our policies and our legislation. Heteropatriarchy is what, Jackie Alexander, Tobagonian feminist scholar, lesbian, talks about, that she says that this kind of thinking shapes the way and maintains a one family only value, meaning that the nucleus family is the only kind of family that is respected, and everything else around it is demonized and criminalized. And we see that with colonial laws such as the criminalizing of prostitution and lesbianism and anal sex, because all of those things challenge the quote-unquote natural order of things, which is man with woman, woman with man, having children, having one kind of penetrative sex. And we see how this has limited everyone else. We see it in our immigration laws, where prostitution, where people who are expected to come in the country to do prostitution is banned. People with mental disorders, queer people are not, it's in our laws, and it is shaped by heteropatriarchy, saying that we only want one kind of being, which is a heterosexual man, and then having a heterosexual female as his mate, and kind of excluding everything, all of the nuances, all of the different ways of feeling and sharing love becomes criminalized, becomes demonized by this one way of seeing life, right?
Well, we still live in a society where we have fathers who say, and men who say, that they rather have a dead child than a gay one. And that's something that I think people say that very blatantly without any, without feeling any sort of qualms whatsoever. But, the thing about it is, as well, I want to add to this conversation, is there seems to be, whilst it is that we are talking about predominantly men and the patriarchy and the gay community, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and it's a discussion that I really want to bring into the conversation. The L and the B seems to be more accepted than the G.
Correct.
Why? Marcus, tell me why.
Sorry, the L and the B?
The L and the B tends to be more accepted than the G.
Well, I mean, I can't speak for the L or the B because I do identify with either, nor does my work really surround that. But what I have come across in the scholarship, I don't think it's accepted. I think because, one, women generally, their sexuality are highly ever considered nor valued in larger conversations because of the patriarchy. Heteropatriarchy cares about male sex. So lesbianism doesn't get any kind of attention other than it being celebrated for men's pleasure, right?
Correct.
And then even in some spaces, lesbianism is against the law because it goes against heteropatriarchal order of a woman being with a man. So I don't think it's more accepted. I think it's less valued and doesn't seen as a threat to men losing their masculinity, but more rather either not considered and valued or seen as something that actually heightens and ups the status quo for men, right?
That's an interesting perspective there, Marcus. Yeah. Valini, you want to come in here?
That isn't something, well, I mean, from a mental health perspective, that isn't something that I have come across with the lesbians or bisexuals being more accepted. So I really can't comment on that. What I can say is across the board that the members of the LGBT community have a higher incidence, almost double the incidence of anxiety and mood disorders, as well as a much higher incidence of substance abuse. And this speaks to the stressors that they are put under across. So I don't think within the group I could just speak about the LGBT group together as one, as having a higher incidence of these mental health issues due to, and some of the things that can contribute to that is discrimination, lack of rights, and just the inequality and the extra stressors that they have to face, and the lack of acceptance that they would go through.
All right. Now, we've all seen that Pride Month has come.
Yes.
And we've seen this, I will be offensive here, charade of flag raising parades on Fort George and in different parts of Trinidad and Tobago, right? So we've raised the flags, we've danced, we've partied, we've had the fun, right, for the month of June.
June, correct.
Right? But that doesn't touch on any of the issues that we are discussing.
Correct.
And if it is that we have a strong LGBT community in Trinidad and Tobago, we should only see them in the month of June.
No.
We should see them throughout the year.
Correct.
And they should be petitioning the government and petitioning the minister responsible for gender affairs with solutions and proposals as to how to make life easier for the LGBT community in Trinidad and Tobago. Right. Now, I saw the whole, raising of the flag. Okay, that's been done since 2018, 19.
Yeah.
We now in 2022.
Correct. Yeah.
With the exception of the judgment by Justice Rampasad, nothing else has happened.
No.
So, is it that the community is as divided as the politics?
Well, it looks so. Right now it is. Because just a few people went and raised flags, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't many came out. And how many people do we have on Zoom meetings? Who is the leader right now? Who is the leader? Who's doing all the negotiations for us? Do we have that?
So then, then if the LGBT community is divided, then we have a problem where the whole thrust towards gaining recognition and gaining more rights. And I mean, when I talk about more rights, I'm talking about the whole idea of the whole idea of legislative agendas being amended. So, right. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, the Cohabitational Act does not speak to the same-sex couples. Right. Marcus has spoken about the Immigration Act. The Equal Opportunities Act of 2000 does not say a single word about anybody regarding sexual orientation, and even when it does, it just barely touches on it.
Go ahead. We need right now our community to come together. We need to be our brothers' keepers, because I have seen how a lot of gay men are treated out here in society, and even on social media, it's disgusting. Why bring down your brother or sister in such a manner when you're doing the same thing? You understand? You have to be your brother and you have to unite. We want an inclusive society here in Trinidad and Tobago. We still have back-a-day colonialism laws, right? The colonialism system has robbed us of our religion, of who we are as people, and now we have a government elected not doing anything to support give out hampers and grants, what that could do. Tell me what this government is doing for Trinidad and Tobago.
For sure, our government, our Prime Minister is highly patriarchal, and with it comes with the personality comes one that doesn't seem to be open-minded towards recognizing.
No, he's not.
In fact, I think he made a comment, what one does in one's bedroom is one's business. And while I accept that, the laws, Valini, the laws of Trinidad and Tobago are so flawed that same-sex couples who are in a relationship for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, when one of the partners die, that's a recipe for bacchanal.
Correct.
Yeah, that all accounts for the stresses that they have to face. So in terms of actual relationship issues, in working with couples, same-sex couples, the research as well as my experience have shown that the challenges that these couples face are generally the same that a heterosexual couple would face. And in addition to which, there is living in a society that is not necessarily open, or where they don't have equal legal rights and so on. So it all adds to the stresses that people face, and that in turn affects their mental health. And there's a trickle effect. It affects mental health, it affects physical health. There are disparities in willingness to access healthcare, and that contributes to decreased productivity. It contributes to a greater burden on the healthcare system. So there are trickle effects, and I don't think that we can say just offhandedly that it's just burying your head in the sand to just say it's not something that the leadership isn't even willing to look at.
Well, let me stop there, Valini. So many think that the so-called leaders, right, are not connected to the gays here in the community, right? So that is something a lot of them are expressing their opinions right now.
That the
leader is not that connected right now, right? Let me say for sponsorship NGOs, the United Nations, Canada, what are all the monies going to? Why isn't there shelters for young gay men and women that are being kicked out from their homes, right? Why isn't there any support relief, anything of these sorts? There's nothing. What are they doing with the money?
But in my experience, I can tell you that I've had two situations where I've had, when I was on UE campus, I've had a situation where luckily, I have to say, or divine intervention, a student of mine called and he asked me if I had left campus as yet, and I said no. And he said he needed to speak to me, so he was jogging on campus and ran straight across from the pool into LRC car park. And it is one of the rarest, but one of the dearest interventions I could say that I cherish, will cherish the rest of my life. He was prepared to kill himself that night. He was prepared to kill himself that night because, and he told me he was going to commit suicide because he had been put out of his home by his father because he had been outed by his ex, and therefore he didn't see a reason to live. And I had to sit down and sit with him on the ground for about 2.5 hours, convincing him that there was more to life than family. And sometimes you need to look outside of the traditional family in order to get the support that you need in order to live. And sometimes, and a lot of times, we find that there are adopted homes and adopted parents, unofficial adopted parents, that lean towards taking in an individual, whether it's be a teenager or someone in their early 20s, who have been subjected to the harsh parental, parenting, I should say. But you made a good point about shelters.
Yeah.
Where is the support group for our young people that are struggling with sexuality and struggling to find a space in our society? Marcus?
So, I mean, I think we have to be very careful with how we shift responsibility on whether it be state or community or even within the LGBT community. We have to be very, very careful to not ask the quote-unquote oppressed group to do their own work. To me, I have been of the opinion, and I've seen this even with my own friends, where, you know, having the larger society take up the responsibility of those in minority positions becomes the kind of new response. So, you know, this whole idea of ally isn't to support the work of LGBT plus folks, but really is to do the work and the internal change with allies and ally-like communities so that there isn't a need for LGBT movement and work to be done, right? So, you know, I've had this conversation with the late Brandy Rodriguez, the president of the Transgender Coalition against Transgender Coalition for Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, she always said that for Pride Month, let's put the T in front, so let it be TLBG, so that the other privileged persons in the community could start doing the work required for those who don't have access, for those who don't have voice, for those who don't have the same kind of privilege and resources as, you know, as others, because we do know how much layers of
bureaucracy,
you know, of stress, you know, exist in the trans community. So, you know, so I am not one to ask, you know, not one particular kind of response. And I'm definitely not about asking the oppressed or the minority groups to have a response for something that you know, that's affecting them. You know, so to me, it's really about how does society take responsibility as a collective to kind of treat with the kind of, you know, heteronationalism that Andal Sign talks about, where we have a kind of a race, ethnicity, classist kind of way of shaping society, where, you know, the top and, you know, the haves continue to have, and the have-nots continue to you know, catch their ass. And the have not just being financial, I'm talking about respectability. People, particular types of people are still not respected in this community. The LGBT Pride Month is so important because it reflects on how not just your sexuality, but how being gay and Black, being gay and Indo affects your everyday functioning, right? What you can and cannot do. So again, it goes back for us as a society to have a collective response and to stay away from putting the responsibility on the oppressed group to do their own work, to share their own stories, to continue having this what we call trauma talk and all of those kinds of things, when, you know, we are supposed to be the one thinking about what are we as privileged, cisgendered people, heterosexual people, policymakers, you know, how are we ensuring that all voices are you know, in participation with the creation?
All right.
You know?
So Marcus, let's take a break, and I like the direction in which you're going. So we're gonna take a break and be right back because we've got a few minutes to go, and I want to just, we're heading in a very, you know, a really nice conversation that, let's take a break. Hello, this is Dr. Shane Mohammed, geopolitical scientist and lecturer. I invite you to join me for a new exciting show on IETV, 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. The Real Politique is not an ordinary talk show, but one of education, enlightenment, and examination. Here we discuss not just the surface issues, but the factors, shortcomings, and lack of will to change the socio-economic and political realities facing our nation. We ask the hard questions, seek out the difficult answers, whilst at the same time creating a space for dialogue and discussion which all of society can learn, understand, and hopefully respond actively and for the greater good of the Republic. This is the Real Politique. Welcome back. I hope you're even more uncomfortable now that we've gotten into the depth of the conversation. And I want to go back to what Marcus is saying. Oh, no, Marcus, I am saying that I am not disagreeing with you. But in order for the haves to help the haves not in our society, and a society like Trinidad and Tobago, where privilege gives you license, unless we have a united group of persons, and the LGBT community, I consider the LGBT community to be a minority group in Trinidad and Tobago who has the ability to make massive impact in Trinidad and Tobago from a cultural, creative, innovative perspective. And some of the brightest minds are within the LGBT community and are contributing to Trinidad and Tobago. However, they cannot identify as a part of the spectrum. Now, I am with you up until the point where you are saying that we can't allow the oppressed to formulate, and you could guide me with my words to make sure that I get it right. We can't afford to allow the oppressed to be the ones to champion their own cause. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, I am saying that it is quite. You see, you have to think about the politics of it. We expect rape victims to advocate for themselves, tell their stories, and then those who are not survivors who have had these experiences become the ones to make these policies. What I'm saying is that I'm not denying the fact that the work has to be done, right? I am saying that we lack a kind of participatory culture where everyone is supposed to be asking the question, who is missing? Who is not part of the table? So yes, I am saying that it is unfair to be putting the burden on me, who is an oppressed group, to have to be doing the work to change society when, really and truly it should be society reflecting on their ills and inequalities.
The problem there, Marcus, the problem there is that we have a society that is ignorant, to start with, of the fact that this issue is a real issue. And we also have a society where people are willing, as Valini was saying, willing to keep their heads down into the sand like ostriches and behave as if this does not exist. When in fact, we are seeing matters in the High Court where people where couples who have been together and one partner has died is fighting in court against the family because suddenly the relationship didn't exist. We see where people are discriminated against by the very fact that they are what I would call sexually stereotyped because they dress a particular way. Their pants might be too tight. And I'm talking about guys, girls with short hair, girls with boy cuts, girls. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that ridiculousness needs to come to an end by, I am saying, their strength in numbers. So friends of the LGBT community, members of the LGBT community need to come together, and Pride Month, June, from the 1st of June to the 30th of June, should not be just about raising flags, but about having discussions, panel discussions, programs, workshops, training sessions, mentoring sessions. It should have camps where children, and young adults, and if we as a society fail to realize that young people, teenagers, and even those younger than teenagers in their pre-pubescent years have already started to discover their sexuality, whether it be in a small way or a large way, you can't beat it out of the children. We as a society have to come together and realize that, one, the LGBT community exists. 2, it is growing. 3, Gen Z is in your face and they don't care, right? And at the end of the day, the government is elected and has the ultimate responsibility to protect those, the minority and empower them. And therefore, why have a minister responsible for gender affairs and she's only going to talk about what is male and female? You understand? So I hear you on that point, but I also believe that the group has to be strong to be able to face so I would put it as a David and Goliath situation. The group, the community is the David. The government and the legislature is the Goliath. And therefore, the strength in numbers is what is going to help craft a new way of thinking within our society. And I also believe that the University of the West Indies has a very key role to play in how we shape society going forward. I take comments from Valini first, and then I come back to you, Marcus.
I agree, and I hear what Marcus is saying, and I do think that awareness precedes transformation. So whilst I agree with you that there is more that could be done, I do have faith that it would be done in due time, hopefully sooner rather than later, when it comes to Pride Month and so on. But I also believe that awareness precedes transformation, and the simple act that we have a Pride Month is a victory. So we may not be at the top of the mountain, but we may be halfway up. Or let's not discount the progress that we have made. And I do think that it's a responsibility for the conscious people in society, for all of society, not just the LGBT group, as well as allies, family members. I think it's really important to recognize the health and the societal and mental health implications of discrimination, of not being seen for who you are, of being ostracized. There are very severe consequences. Like you said, Shade, with that young man who, with bullying, with suicide attempts, and with substance abuse, with mental health issues. And it's important for all of us as human beings to support other human beings and to make them feel safe and to make them feel heard and to make them feel seen. And one of the problems that I think gets in our way as a society is that we are so high-strung now that when we have, whether or not we are going to remain alive, when crime is so out of control, there's so many economic issues that sometimes it's not out of ill intent. I think sometimes people are just distracted and desperate in other ways. So I think the flag raising and all of the Pride Month activities, it's evolving, and there needs to be a greater awareness and a responsibility taken up by all of us as individuals to move, equal rights, to make this place where every creed and race finds an equal place.
I agree with you. Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, I stick to my type of ideology around where the problem doesn't lie with the oppressed, it lies with the oppressor.
Of course it does. I am not disagreeing with you at all. But the oppressor, the oppressor in this scenario, though, Marcus, is ignorant of the fact that the oppressed exist or pretend.
And I think the conversation has to be around not the kind of advocacy, because we have a legacy of advocacy in the LGBT community. We have a calendar of quite interesting events beyond just parties. I've been doing a panel every year in the last 5 years since Pride around gender and multiple issues, from child sexual abuse to coming out to LGBT migrants. So, we have to be very careful in how we call out particular communities, because we just become that group that says, we become those people who just says, you are responsible for your own well-being, when it's really everyone else's responsibility for how you value and respect and treat people. So yeah.
And it also comes down to, though, as well, is how do we, I like the point you talk about how we treat people, but we have a history of being derogatory. We have a history of being bullies. We have a history of, I just wanted to read this for you all. Coming out of the judgment in Antigua, one of the things that stood out was that the claimant in his affidavit said on one occasion when he reported an incident of robbery, the police officers appeared to be more focused on his sexual orientation as opposed to the alleged crime. This he concluded from the fact that the officers on duty at the time posed a question such as, why are you gay? And why did you choose this lifestyle? Right? So when I'm only highlighting that aspect of the judgment. The judgment goes on to talk about, Justice Robertson in Antigua pulled matters from South Africa, which decriminalized sodomy. Navteed Singh Johar versus the Union of India, where in 2018 that was decriminalized. 2019 Botswana. She spoke about Trinidad and Tobago and Belize. She spoke about what in fact the Belizean constitution dealt with the right to privacy. And that's another thing that I want to talk to as we come to almost to the end of the show. There seems to be people who are hell-bent on pulling you out of the closet. And coming out of the closet is something that has to be a choice. And Velini, you have spoken a lot about mental health tonight, and I'm glad you did, because it is a serious aspect and a serious, I would say, injury in the LGBT community. Yeah. And within the LGBT community itself, you have persons who, while they are out and proud, they are friends that are more cautious because they have to be, because of work, because of school, because of the society they live in.
Double life.
They have to live the double life because of culture and family and all of those things. But we are not taking into consideration that within the community, we have to be mindful that you can't pull people out of the closet, and there's no need for people to identify. We've also have to reach the Gen Zs actually have reached the point where they don't care to identify with any of these letters within the spectrum. They just simply identify as an individual. And I think in one of the things that we have to move towards is sometimes we have to learn from the young ones in order to go forward. I said Tobago may lead Trinidad one of these days, and they've been showing that they can. But that whole idea of pulling people out of the closet, whether by the whole idea of scrutiny, whether by stereotyping, we need to. It's a larger discussion that we need to have on a larger scale on a night when we have 2 hours to discuss this. But I mean, this is not going to just end simply here tonight, but there needs to be someone who is prepared to advocate in a larger scale, or some organization, whether it be friends and allies of the LGBT community, or whether it be a new organization that is formed that puts proposals to the government in a manner that is not adversarial, but one that is more cooperative. And I'm really happy and really glad to have had all of you on my show tonight. I thank you all very much for being here. I had initially invited Minister Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, and she sent her apologies because she's in Senate. But I will revisit, and you can look forward to my phone call when we revisit this topic in a broader sense. So I hope I made society uncomfortable tonight, and I hope I also educated society, and I hope I made society a little more aware that we need to be, as a society, more tolerant, more respectful, more compassionate, more embracing, because the LGBT community, whether someone might be 9 years old or 39 years old, isn't going anywhere. So that's it for the Real Politique for tonight. Thank you for joining me, and do have a good night.